Okay, so the first thing you want to do is make sure that you don't have a broken splint like this. We're going to use this one because it's broken and, you know, her finger isn't. So go ahead and put your finger out.
Which one?
This one looks good. So one thing that we don't do a lot of here is if you look here, here's a metatarsal, excuse me, here's a interphalangeal joint. And if you bend it a little bit, that's going to keep it bent. And then you bend it again on this one. And if you really like your patient, you bend it a little bit more. But that usually works just like that. So if you put a finger right there, so you're going to want to wrap it a little bit here. What you don't want to do is like crossovers, because if you do this, something like that, you're putting extra pressure on it. So you're probably going to cut off the circulation, the patient will die and you'll get sued. But no pressure. So you can do something along those lines. You don't want to make it too tight, so after you're done, make sure that they can still feel the fingertip and that you get some cap refill. So when I push on her fingernail, you can see that that's there. If we did Devin, you wouldn't be able to see it because his fingers are so freaky. You can put a little bit more of this if you want to put a little bit of extra pressure on it. Just make sure it's not too tight, and then you can give them some extra stuff so they can tighten it or loosen it at home. And the reason I like it bent is because it's less likely to bump up against something, and also she can make like a little hook. Go ahead, do a little hook there. Like a pirate. Okay, that's all we need.
What are you doing?
So, overkill with this one. You're going to want to go here and then here. And part of the reason we're doing overkill is because you're going to roll it back. It makes it look super cool. I'm a professional. If you don't have the equipment that you like, what I recommend is going out the door and being like, "Someone bring me some scissors!" That's what usually people respond pretty well to that. So, all right, so what we're going to do is curl this up a little bit. What do you think this for? I guess you might. So this goes way past what I want it to. If you find that, like me, you've gone way too far, you can certainly cut this a little bit shorter, but you don't really need to because you're going to be patting the bejesus out of this. If you look at this stuff, this is super thin. I'm not a huge fan, so don't be shy using an awful lot of this. Today we're probably not going to use as much because, you know, it's not really broken. But what you're going to want to do is start here and then sort of overlap a little bit, so you're going over the part that you just went over to. Now for here, it's not that important. We're going to assume that this is an ankle fracture, usually on the outside. And when you get to the point where it's an ankle fracture, pat the bejesus out of it. If there's any bejesus in there, it should be patted. And so we're just really going to put quite a bit on here. What you want to avoid is sort of loose gaps like this. So it's okay to have a little bit, but if it gets to the point where you've made a huge bucket of sadness, then you're going to create a pressure point. And you especially don't want to do that over the ankle. So I don't care so much here, but when we're doing the ankle, we really want to make sure that that's well padded, and that's not where we're putting the pressure. Oh, this is much better, actually. Not much better. But then you can go here, and as you can see, I'm really padding it. I probably don't need to do it that much on this one because, like I said, it's not broken. So if you get to a point where you've got a big fold like this, now this is not going to make a serious fold, but if you did, you could cut it and put one over the other. So here's just an example. Hope I don't cut your foot. Great scissors. Give me some scissors! And then you can just put one over it, and then you've sort of gotten rid of most of the fold. So that being said, you get the idea. A lot of padding in the places where it hurts, and then you just kind of go up, 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 down. Up, up, down. What's wrong with me?
A lot.
Yeah. And yet they still ask me to do the video. So then maybe a little bit more there. This looks terrible.
Edit out.
It'll look good when I'm done. And then some people will cut this. If you're really cool, you just tear it. Look how cool I am. And then what you can do is take this part and roll it back. And they'll never know that part is sloppy because you're going to cover the rest of this. So now almost invariably you'll discover once you've done this part doesn't quite fit the way that you thought it would. So you put this here and then you can fold this back. So again, if you get the stiff part here at the end because it's dried out, don't worry about it, just cut it off. But again, for Devin, you don't care. So that's there, and you're covered mostly with padding. Always make sure that you're above the joint and both joints. So here you have at the ankle, you go all the way to the metatarsal, so at least you want to go here. People are always mad when they've done it like this and I make them redo it. They cry, complain to their manager. It's rough. It's hard being me. And then this part also looks like it's pretty good. I think we're in decent shape. So some people, like I said before, like to just put this on and let it dry. No, says Ross. So always put some gloves on, because if you get that stuff on your hands, it could burn. I'll laugh at you. You could be going, ow. I'm like, ha, sucker. Couple different ways you can do it. One way to do it is to take this part. In fact, let's just cut this a little bit shorter because my OCD is kicking in. OCD and dull scissors, it's a bad match. If you want to be really thorough, what you do is you open this thing up. And then there's your padding. Just cut a little bit off the end, and then that way it's not going to be sticking out. You take, well, you know what, I'm going to do both of them. Same thing.
Yeah. No, I really,
You're going to get wet, but it's not much.
no, I really just do want to go down the middle.
Yeah, that's fine. If you're a loser. So, here's what you get your hands down. Here's this thing. If you put it in hot water, it'll dry a little bit faster, but because I'm doing all this talking and really don't know what I'm doing, it's sort of cold water. So, do that one first. Now, with these or anything that you're doing, the more layers you put on, the more exothermic it is, which means basically you have an increased chance of burning them. So just bear that in mind. You know, the more layers, especially if you're using plaster, people are a little bit more prone to this. So that's kind of what you're then next up you need to do is concrete. I usually start at one end or the other. This is where you're kind of doing your form fitting. So just be cautious. You know, this is what they're going to be living with for the next 4 to 14 days. Almost always you get a little bump right here at the back. We didn't today because I'm amazing. I'm kidding. Sometimes, especially if you use something that's a little bit too big, and if that's the case, just gently fold it in and then wrap it down. But what you don't want to do is make a big bump that you're going to create a pressure sore with. So I'm not making it pretty yet, because my main goal here is to get it firm in place. Sometimes Tiffany, who's shy, will ace wrap one of these and then put the second one on, especially when she's alone or lonely. Sometimes she'll just be sitting at home eating a pizza by herself going, I'm only going to put one in. All right, if you don't look at the other side, you can't see the part that's missing. Ta-da! So next one we're going to do is a Sugar Tong. So there's a song called Shaka Khan, and you can look it up on YouTube.
Chaka 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 Khan, Chaka Khan, Chaka Khan, Chaka Khan, Shaka Khan. Let me rock it, Chaka Khan. Let me rock it, that's all I wanna do. Shaka Khan, let me wanna scream. Let me rock it, rock it.
Actually, I'll probably put a little this on this and goes Shaka Tong, maybe talking like tape. Basically, when you're doing one of these things, it's a good idea to put it on the one that hurts first. So we're gonna want to go, excuse me, the one that doesn't hurt first, unless you're mad at them, in which case it's hilarious. So we'll go like this. I like how you're hiding your fingers because you're afraid of me. And so we'll go ahead and we'll do that, and we'll put this one on just like we did on the foot. We want to get so funny space there, so it goes further than you want to. So on this one we're going to go past the elbow. So just make sure you cut there. Again, we'll go back down. So if you'll hold your arm out 90 degrees there. This is like 96. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and start here, and then go all the way around. Here's a very common mistake. Okay, people go like that and they're like, hey, I'm done. But again, you got to cover the joint below and the joint above. The joint above is like right here. So just to be safe, I usually go past the MCPs, or the part, so that just basically the fingers are forming. So mark that there. And then you've got your measurement. So, you can't help me, you've got a broken arm. I think he's malingering. His leg is already healed.
Yeah. Are they better or worse?
I'm so tired. Alright, so smooth like that. Correct.
Unless you are like, I'll say it. Okay.
So again, we're just gonna sort of measure this here, make sure you're in the right area. This does not look good at all. Did we do too short? We did. Yeah.
But
So one trick that you can do is if
hold
the
on, let me
splint,
switch sides.
if the splint is too short, switch patients.
Break someone else's arm.
So one thing that I'm going to show you though is make sure that you make a thumb hole. So and then you just basically do that by picking it up and cutting right through. Ow! Ow! Just kidding, it didn't hurt. Totally fine.
You're good. Too bad there's a strike.
So a different option than what he did at ripping it open and taking the whole thing out is you can just do a little bit here, and then I just cut off these splinters because those could poke the patient and then they can get injured from that because they get really sharp when it's dry. Then you just cover it back up and don't have to worry about it. But make sure you do it to both sides. This is already pokey.
You're going to miss that because it's really tight.
Hmm?
You're going to miss it because it's really tight.
And then, so also you can do your elbow crease, kind of like that. Also, nice pressure. Crease.
Oh.
If you do think there's enough crease, maybe try to start again.
We can just video.
So, one area specifically you're trying to go over, just get over there. No, no, no.
So you might do something that, you know? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, this is probably and then you take this, and instead of what he did earlier, I just kind of open it up here, up to the faucet, let it run down. Because you don't need it to get soaked, but just wet enough to where it's gonna.
And then he uses the towel to dry it.
I do.
You guys both do it so different.
But I'm just getting the excess out first here.
But my way is right because I'm making the
master.
video. No, just because I'm making the video.
How do you do it with the towel? Just.
Well, yeah, perfect.
Right.
Nailed it.
Okay.
And then he takes this and folds it down.
And the same with this. All right.
Just go. If you go longer on one, I won't tell you.
You won't go the other way.
For hands, typically I'd probably use a 2-inch ace wrap at first, You can do smaller ones to wrap around the hand and then work your way down because you always want to go distal to proximal for blood flow. So I do a smaller one like this.
I'm helping.
These are much easier with two people. And when you're wrapping the patient, you want to make sure it's not too tight because especially after initial injury, they can continue to swell for the next couple of days.
It's actually why we use a splint instead of formal casting, because if we cut off the circulation, then the patient sees you and then they own the clinic, and then you're working for some patient who's like, I need an x-ray and antibiotics. So one little tip that I like most of the time, if there's a small dislocation of or a displacement of the wrist, it sort of folds in on itself. So one thing that can help prevent that is a little bit of, they call it a cock up, and just sort of bending the hand back a little bit. Always handy. So if you really want to impress me, that's the way.
What I do differently than Ross as well is the stockinette I leave it hanging out and then I put it on and then I wrap it around so it holds the ace wrap in place.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So you can do either or. But
I just want to make sure that you don't do it like I do accidentally, where you leave it out the whole time. Devin will make fun of me. I'll cry.
So wiggle your fingers.
Cap refill is intact. Gross sensation is intact. 2-point discrimination. Nobody really does that. 2-point discrimination is intact.
Nice.
So one other option that you can do from here, if you've got an elbow fracture, is you can do exactly this, and you can do another sugar tong. It goes up to about here. So if you go and take a sugar tong and put it here, all the way around, that helps immobilize the elbow as well. I'm going to show you a different splint that's called the ulnar gutter splint, and I'll show you the two different ways that you can do that.
What are you doing?
So there's another kind of way that you can deal with it. So sometimes people get a fracture on the fifth metacarpal of the boxer's fracture. And one of the good splints for that is an ulnar gutter splint. When you're doing the ulnar gutter splint, again, you want to make sure that you're going past the joint above and below. So this is the joint below, this is kind of the joint above, so just go a little bit past the fingers and you won't go wrong. It basically hugs the corner of this. Now, if I was doing just sorry, broken wrist, man. If I was doing just the finger, excuse me, just the fifth metacarpal, I would probably go to about here. Now, another way that you can use this same splint is for an elbow fracture. I find it way easier than the double sugar tong. So if you're going to do one that's all the way to the elbow, you just go up. You go from here all the way up past the elbow. And that's probably the simplest way to do an elbow splint. I'll do the elbow splint, but you'll see what it looks like as an ulnar gutter as well. Also, once again, if you're doing just an ulnar gutter splint and you don't like the patient, you can do it all the way up past the elbow too. I don't want to do this anymore. So if you have a really solid edge like this, it's really crinkly and gross, get them. Stab them with it. Oh, so comfy. never done that.
Me either.
It looks good.
It's like, oh, new
Looks
trick.
like it would be
Yeah, it
very
looks like-
comfortable.
Yeah, you just want to avoid, you know, the sharp. So what you don't want to do is this. That's wrong. That's going to create a pressure point. Now, if I was doing an elbow fracture, I'd do that same kind of thing where I was spending 8 years going over this elbow, but we're kind of running out of material. So. Yes! So I'd like to focus a little bit on some of the craft part that I did here. Can I say that in my video?
Sure.
So you can see here, there's little things, and you can either make a real gentle fold here, or again, cut it and then overlap it. I'll show you how to cut it and overlap it. And then make Devin really nervous that I'm gonna cut his skin. But I'm not. It's okay, Devin. And I'll just sort of fold one over the other. So now it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Done. Don't get fiberglass on your hand. It burns.
I never put gloves on. And I'm doing it.
And do you rub your eyes?
No. I'm not
You
clumsy.
should try it next time.
Does it help? I don't.
What do you know, Russ? You're just a PA.
Yeah.
You do like 5 times as many splints as you do. Then why am I making the video?
Because you asked me.
I asked you.
You asked me to help you. You asked me what for.
Help. Okay,
Okay, I'm recording. I shut up. I don't want to get it.
Who has more fun than us? No one has more fun than us. Okay, so, so I folded it up, go a little bit past here. Can I borrow your other hand? Thank you. And then this again is easier with 2 people. So, you just start. Again, first one, just loosely. Now again, for a standard ulnar gutter, you'd stop probably about here, and we're just doing our best. You don't need some sharp, I will kill you, 7 high, little wheels, but please take on us. Get more rotation out, so we'll be fine. I'm going to add all out, that's pretty sure time to go back. Well, I want to see it pretty clearly, so just like, you know, routine thing, so, well. I didn't do that, just that way. Okay, that's not funny, I do that. And then, of course, you put them in a sling. And then this is just to cover out the part that didn't work as good.
This one does look better than
It does.
the leg.
Mm-hmm.
Shut it.
Oh.
I'll make you do a leg. And remember, I did the leg by myself.
That's true.
Little credit here. You helped me with this one. So again, this should be fine. If you're worried about the wrist, you do a little bit of a cock up. It is nice to have them in position of function. So like as though you were holding a glass. So that gives them a little bit more function. So if you put your thumbs together, awesome. Ta-da!
Yay.
You gotta do the thumbs up.